Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam in Life with me, Raza Kazim. Family is an important part of the lives of a lot of people around the world. But on occasion, the same concept of family that can be a rock of stability for some can in fact be the living hell for others. What does Islam say about this?
Islam has strongly emphasized the great importance of maintaining relations with our relatives and kin. Allah has stated in the Holy Quran, "And those who break the covenant of Allah after its ratification, and sever that which Allah has commanded to be joined, and work mischief in the land, on them is the curse, and they shall have the evil of the abode." By severing what Allah has joined is interpreted as severing the bonds of kinship, or not keeping good relations with blood relatives. Unfortunately, cutting relations with family and relatives is not seen as a major problem in the Western societies, and this influences also Muslim families living in the West. There's an encouragement from the secularist culture to cut out negative energy in our lives, and thus avoid people who cause us grief, even if they are our own kindred. However, Islam, on the other hand, highly encourages us to extend our hand for peace, to maintain relations with our kindred, even if the cause of dispute is not our fault, and even if they have committed injustice towards us.
We're honored to be joined by our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan, to discuss all of these issues. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. I wanted to start off by asking, is the concept of family in the Islamic context really important?
Yes, it's critical, it's essential. It's really the center of our understanding when it comes to our relationship to God and our relationship to our society. The first condition for us is that there is no way for an individual to come close to God if he or she is not, for example, serving her or his parents. So the relationship here is very important. This is the path towards our own salvation from an Islamic perspective, to the point even that the second name of God, Allah, it's Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman, the way we are translating it, is the merciful or the more merciful. But in Rahman there is Rahim. And Rahim is the same root as to the word as Silat al-Rahim. And Silat al-Rahim is this relationship between the parents and their children, is this progeny and this essential. So the fact that we are connected to Ar-Rahman, it's Silat al-Rahim, which is really what is connecting the mother to her children. It's exactly the same root. So we can understand here that there is this type of relationship that God has with us, not at all in the way there is something like incarnation in Islam. This is completely rejected from an Islamic perspective. But just to make it clear for us that there is something which is this mercy, this love coming from God that is connecting Him to us and us to Him through the relationship with our family.
In terms of the idea of cutting relations with family, what would Islam have to say about that?
This is something which is important. We should never, as the verse was quoted in the clip, we should never cut relationship with our parents, with our children, except in one situation which happened in the Quran with Noah, and what is, for example, the rejection by, for example, the child, a boy or girl, of anything which has to do with God, which is rejecting religion. This could sometimes explain why you have to cut. I would say that the literal understanding that this cutting because he or she is rejecting God, we should be very cautious. Because this is, I would say today, that this is why we should not cut. We should not cut because there is a rejection. We still have to communicate and try to communicate. So from an Islamic perspective, when you enter into this, we are not following in the footsteps of the Catholic Roman tradition by saying, you know, divorce is unacceptable and rejected in Islam. It's abghadul halal. It's the most detested thing that is permissible in Islam is for you to divorce. Meaning what? Meaning when you enter a relationship, when we get married, what you have to understand that it's not an easy task, and especially today, to be married within our society. So you should learn how to deal with the other, how to deal with your wife, how to deal with your husband, and all the conditions that are going to help you to have a harmonious life. These are important elements, and very often the Western Muslims, for example, but by the way, not only the Western Muslims, in Muslim majority countries we have exactly the same problem. We are very modern Muslims when it comes to this, because we don't get the deep substance of the Islamic message when it comes to family.
You've talked about in terms of parents and children and so on, but what about family that extends beyond those two groupings that you've mentioned? What's the attitude towards that?
Yes, and I think that this is also very important, because it's not only the nucleus family, you know, father, mother, and children. It's wider than this. In the Islamic understanding, it's, for example, from an Islamic understanding of you with your mother, for example, your aunt ta'dilu al-um, meaning it's the same, it's your second mother. So your uncles are your second fathers, your aunts are your second mothers, and you have an extended family. And this is something which is very important. As a human being, at the end of your life, you are going to be questioned alone, but your life should be lived with all your family. So you need to keep this connection, silat al-rahim, by calling, communicating, asking, serving. And remember, whatever is your age, at the end, you are always the son of somebody or the daughter of somebody. And it means that before God, when you are the son of somebody and or the daughter of somebody, you should understand that the best you can do is, when he is alive, to serve him, and when he is not or she is not, is to pray for him or for her. So there is a permanent connection, whatever is the situation, meaning that this is part of and should be part of our life, meaning as well that it should be part of our culture. So instead of how it was said in the clip, that the Muslims are following in the footsteps of the Western culture by not connecting with their parents, not connecting with their children, not connecting with the wider family, it should be the other way around. We should enter into the Western cultures and bring something which is the added value of our principles.
And within that context, just to extend this even further, what about the idea about your attitude towards your in-laws? Are they included within the family or not? Yes,
of course. As soon as your daughter or your son gets married, it's part of the family. So it's widening the scope. It's a perception that you have to deal with all this family and then with the children. So we have a sense here that, yes, you have the social structure, which is the first one, and then it's connected. So there is a sense, even in anything which has to do with inheritance in Islam, it's connected with so many within the family. It's not only the father and the mother, the son and the daughter. It's connected to many levels and many links in our society, which means that the family is central for you as a spiritual reference in your life, because it means that there is a jihad that you have to indulge in when it comes to keeping the family, serving the family. And this is what the Muslims should do, and not the other way around, accepting that because now we are in individualistic cultures, we end up thinking about ourselves and not thinking about serving the family.
This all sounds very good, but one of the issues that sometimes does come up, that it's sometimes family that causes this grief. And how do we counter the negativity that sometimes can be faced in that kind of situation?
Yeah, and that as everything in our life, the positive aspect, you can find so many negative aspects. So this is why in your question it's very important to ask ourselves from a spiritual viewpoint, in which way the family is going to play a positive role and in which way it could play a negative role. It could play a positive role if it's quite clear that nothing in the family is preventing you from being yourself. It means that the starting point within the family is accepting your autonomy as a human being and not having this, a collective pressure or the family pressure that at the end you feel that you cannot just breathe, that you cannot just have your opinion. It means that within the family, it's a family where you are going to be yourself. You are going to be educated in order to be yourself. Communication is essential. Love, of course, is the start of everything, but communication is important, and that you have a space somewhere. That and it means when I'm just talking in the physical side that you need to have a space. It means that it's very difficult in some of our societies in the Muslim majority countries that you are 5 or 6 in the same room. How come? This is the family here. It's not helping you to evolve and to fulfill all the potentialities of your personality. So one of the basic rights of any individual is to have the space. And the space is important because in the Quran, when it comes to talk about the family, the verse in Surah Ar-Rum is talking about a second, litaskunu. So this is where you are going to find home, and home means space where you are protecting your individual dimension, but also constructing out of this something which is the family links and bounds that you need to deal with.
Lots of interesting points. So we do like to keep the show as interactive as possible and really value your opinion. Here's what you sent us this week.
This week we asked, why does Islam put so much emphasis on maintaining good family relations? Nazia from India said, blood is thicker than water. We hear this all the time. Islam sees this truth and encourages us to keep in good relations with our family because they are the ones who will be there for us when we really need them. Mohammed from UK said, Islam has a beautiful system of ensuring societal harmony. This harmony starts with families, so as peace and love can be maintained in families, then the whole society will be in harmony. And Suleiman from USA said, we don't choose our family, so it needs a lot of patience to keep in good and cordial relationship with every member of the family. When we overcome this challenge, then keeping good relations with others becomes a breeze.
Islam has always emphasized on relationship with your blood relatives. It will increase your blessings, your sustenance, your risk, your age, everything. And family unit, I think, is very pivotal as everything. Because if you're going to be unified in your family, your community will be unified, your country will be unified, and so the world will be unified.
To keep Sila Raham.
Yeah, you have to keep Sila Raham.
Because it's important to keep Sila Raham, and then we can all be together as Muslims united, and it gives positive aspects and impacts across the globe.
Family unit is the nucleus of any community. So when we look at a community as a whole, it's a combination of families. If you look at our history as Muslims, it's always been surrounded around families and unity of families.
I think at the end of the day, it's you will find that in for most people, whatever happens, once you're past a certain age, it's all about the family. They're the only ones who will stick around.
So our fitrat is a good fitrat then when we start from family. So it always starts from family, and then we spread out into the whole wider world community and spreading the message of love and peace and prosperity.
That's all the comments we have for this week. If you'd like to have your views featured in the show, be sure to follow us on Facebook or join us on Twitter. Now you can send your own videos with your comments and even your questions to islamandlife@presstv.com.
One of the things that was being talked about in the clip was this idea of unity and the fact that unity within the family can somehow be rolled out and cause unity elsewhere as well. Very optimistic kind of angle that the gentleman was coming from. What would you say to that?
I would say yes. I think it's very idealistic. And still...
But we want it to be like that. From an Islamic idealistic point of view.
But the problem is to look at it from, you say, as soon as you have a good family and harmony within the family, it's going to have an impact on the society, and then the society, that's true. But it's not as simple as that. It's not going to be from one step to another in such a way. The other way of thinking about it would be, you're not going to get peace within the society or harmonious relationship if within the families we are dealing with crisis. The truth is that today in Muslim majority countries, as well as in the West or in the global South, Muslims are experiencing something which it's difficult. It's the ideal of the family and the reality of our life, where our families, we have, rates of divorces that is now becoming higher and higher. We have a lack of communication. We have the same mentality. When there are problems within the family, we don't struggle. We go very quickly and we speak very quickly about divorce, which is permitted, but once again we have to try our best to build on the relationship. And once again, we have affective crisis among Muslims, which is how do we deal and how do you speak about our psychological problems, the lack of affection, the lack of communication within our families today.
Now, it's clearly going to be something that's going to quite challenging and they were some of the points that were made on the clip were actually talking about this idea that from within the family you can actually get some positive things coming out there, but they don't talk about some of the problems that can actually be formed and how to counter some of these problems, because there are conflicts in family when you've got people together who might have very different views about things. How do you counter or how do you resolve those situations which can become quite ingrained, deeply ingrained family problems, which can sometimes go on for generations?
Yeah, and I think that the problem that you are raising here, it's important because we have multiple factors entering into the equation, for example. It could be a family within a specific culture, and the relationship between the family and the culture is problematic, for example, when it comes to the question of authority, for example. That in certain culture, you don't answer back, you don't express your opinion. But that's going to be very difficult. If, for example, in our societies today, you have all these technologies and all the people are thinking, and within our cultures, sometimes that's not the way. And we confuse the relationship, the authority of the father and the mother with being silent, while even the Quran is not saying this, that you have to obey your parents except if they are unjust or imposing into you to do something unjust. So we have the tension sometimes between culture and family. There is something which is also in our relationship within Muslim families, is to translate Islam into a set of obligations and not a space of communication. That's a big problem. And we do this out of love sometimes, that you know that your kids, you know that your wife or your husband are exposed to so many problems in the contemporary. So you try to protect. And your protection is a lack of freedom. And this lack of freedom, it's a psychological problem that you can experience. So the family, out of love, could prevent you from developing or fulfilling some of your potentialities and characteristics as a human being. We also have within the families, and when it comes to the relationship, things that have to do with the relationship between men and women. And you cannot deny that this is a problem sometimes, that some of our brothers are taking from the culture and taking from Islam things that are often used when it's on their side and abused when it's not on their side, and it's mainly respecting the rights of our sisters. So I think that, yes, it's not as easy as this. So we should stop idealizing the notion of family and come to the real life and try to say, okay, how are we going to solve these problems?
One of the things that you talked about was this idea of answering back, and there was a problem associated with it. Is that something that is and should be part of the Islamic culture or the Muslim culture, or is it something that should be not part of it? How do you navigate the differences of opinion and allowing that difference of opinion to be there if the answering back?
You know, by definition, when you say that there is a shura, when you say, for example, in arada fisalan, so it's in the Quran, in the situation where there is a divorce between the husband and the wife, in the situation where you are dealing with your own children, you have to consult, you have to deliberate, you have to talk to one another. If a consultation, a deliberation, a discussion should be based on different opinions, and different opinions is that if you say something I disagree with, I should be able to respond, to speak my mind. It happened even, we have this in the Sunni tradition, when there is a discussion and Omar had his wife answering back, and how come? He's coming from Mecca. In Mecca, the women were having a very low profile within the society. And she said, but the Prophet, peace be upon him, is experiencing this with his daughter, your daughter, his wife, so you have to bear with it. And to understand that there is nothing wrong in Islam in answering back. The problem is no arrogance and politeness, respect within the family. So my respect towards my father, my respect towards my mother, my respect towards my kids, it's not for them to listen and not to answer back and not to question. The respect is coming with a critical mind. So we should avoid thinking that within the family, the notion of authority coming from the father or coming from the mother, it's based on unity of thought, no discussion, no answering back. No, that's not going to work like this. And especially in our time, especially today, where we have so many way of dealing with other cultures and getting knowledge outside of our very narrow cultural setting.
One of the spin-offs or side effects of having this strong concept of family is that you support the family no matter what. What is the Islamic perspective on that?
Yes, I think you are right, that sometimes because it's so important and we feel it's so exposed to contemporary dangers that no matter what, we have to protect it. And no, that's not the case. Sometimes you have to protect the children from their parents because they are not listening. And sometimes, for example, we have to determine that there are rights for the children and rights for the wives and rights for the husbands. So sometimes we have to face it. It's not to idealize the family to the point that we don't take decision when there is a lack of communication and there is beating the woman and violence within. Sometimes the Muslims are not talking about anything which is happening within the neighbor's house because they say, oh, Islam, family is important. No, we can't do this. You cannot save the family at the price of justice and dignity within the family and communication.
Like everything in life, family ties need to be worked on. The kinship does not always come naturally, but requires careful nurturing. The balance that needs to be struck between making an effort to fulfill the Islamic obligation and the realities of what negative influences could be brought to bear is crucial. Sometimes we know things about our family because we know them warts and all, and whereas for others we'll only see the facade. That's all the time we have today. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan for joining us, and I thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.